Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our board meeting of the 28th of May, 2024. Seeing quorum in the room, I would like to call this meeting to order, acknowledging that we meet this evening on the unceded and unsurrendered lands of the Algonquin Nation. We thank them for their enduring stewardship of these lands since time immemorial, and for sharing the grandfather teachings of love, respect, courage, truth, honesty, humility, and wisdom, which I hope will guide our deliberations tonight. In accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, does any board member have an interest to declare? Seeing none, I would like then to move to the report from Committee of the Whole in camera. Vice Chair Milburn.
The Committee of the Whole met in camera this evening and reports and recommends as follows. On a motion by Trustee Aziz, which I will second, that staff proceed as directed in board in camera with respect to a financial matter. On a motion by Trustee Aziz, which I will second, that staff proceed as directed in board in camera with respect to a financial matter. On a motion by Trustee Ali, which I will second, that staff proceed as directed in board in camera with respect to a financial matter.
Thank you. We have held our debates on these three motions in camera, and we will now vote on each of them in sequence or on all of them together. Manager Guthrie? We'll try to do them all together. So I will ask Manager Guthrie if she could please open the vote. Oh, just a moment. Trustee Kaplan-Murth, you had a question?
Yes, through you, Chair. I would like to know, because I was excluded from the in-camera meeting, whether any of those items are items that I should have been party to in order to be able to know what we're voting on now.
These were the items where you were present for? And
no, I wasn't.
The only items on which we are voting.
I wasn't. I was actually excluded from that in-camera meeting. So can I have? We
voted on them, or we had them again this evening in our in-camera agenda. These are those same three recommendations.
So just for the record, I was excluded from that, and I was not privy to the conversation about it.
Thank you for that. So going back to call the question, Manager Guthrie, we can have the vote opened now, and trustees may register their vote in eScribe.
Excuse me, Chair. I didn't get to vote. Like, it hasn't come through on my scribe. It's Donna. Can you hear me?
You can register your vote orally if you want to say.
Okay, I'm in favor.
Madam Chair, in favor.
Trustee Kaplan-Murth, have you voted, or you certainly may vote on these motions, which are the ones you were present for in camera this morning, earlier this evening?
So thank you, Chair. I'll remind you, I was not present. I was excluded from it, and I abstained already.
Thank you. Trustee Blackburn?
Madam Chair, I think it's highly inappropriate that that comment that she was excluded be allowed to stand on the public record when she was in fact not excluded from that part of the meeting.
Madam Chair, if I may add through a point of order, if we were to look at the minutes from the Committee of Whole report and trustees present, I do see that Trustee Kaplan-Murphy was indeed present, just so we have that recorded properly.
Was she present for the in-camera meeting?
That is a good question. I can't answer that.
And you certainly, trustee Kaplan-Murphy, according to the record, you were indeed present. I will ask the executive officer if she has comment on this.
Through you, Madam Chair. Trustee Kaplan-Murphy was present in the earlier meeting until we got to an item of new business, at which point she was restricted from the meeting. But it is within the trustee's purview to abstain from voting on these items, and I believe she has indicated that she has recorded her abstention from voting, and so I think the meeting can proceed.
So any further questions or clarification on this? And we are still waiting for the rest of. And we have the result of the vote on 3 motions from Committee of the Whole in camera this evening. 11 in favor, none opposed, and 1 abstention. Anything further from the meeting this evening, Trustee Kaplan, or sorry, Trustee Milburn?
That is all, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for your report. And now, looking at approval of the agenda, do we have a mover to approve the agenda? Trustee Jenkins, seconded by Trustee Lee. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? And the motion is carried. Which brings us to the briefing from the chair. And I would like to apologize, but we are starting our meeting a little later than usual tonight because earlier we held a reception to celebrate our Community Recognition award winners. The OCDSB is fortunate to have so many dedicated volunteers across our district who help with fundraising, community building, and shaping the overall culture in our schools. The Community Recognition Awards are an opportunity to celebrate some of these amazing individuals and organizations. This year, more than 40 outstanding volunteers have been nominated for the positive impact they've made in our classrooms and beyond. We are very thankful to everyone for their contributions, and I encourage you to visit our website to learn more about this year's Community Recognition Award recipients. Also, thanks again to all members of our community who attended public meetings last week as part of our elementary program review. There will be additional opportunities on Wednesday and Thursday this week. On Wednesday, May the 29th, in-person meetings will take place at Longfields-Davidson Heights Secondary School, Sawmill Creek Elementary School, and Avalon Public School. We will also be offering a virtual session on Thursday, May the 30th. If you're unable to attend, feedback can also be shared on Engage OCDSB. We've received just over 1,750 contributions so far. The feedback page will remain open until Friday, June the 28th. On Engage OCDSB, you will also find more details about our current program model, answers to common questions, and information about the program review in multiple languages. That's all my briefing for tonight. Are there any questions? And seeing none, we'll move right on to the director's briefing.
Through you, Madam Chair, good evening, everyone. Starting on June 1st through the month of June, the Pride flag will be flown outside of all schools and administrative buildings to mark Pride Month. Pride Month is an opportunity to celebrate the diversity, to learn about the achievements and the histories of 2S LGBTQ+ individuals, acknowledge the challenges they continue to face, and stand together against discrimination. All students, all families and staff have the right to feel physically and emotionally safe, welcome and accepted, to be their true selves. The 2S LGBTQ+ community is an important part of our school district, and we're proud to stand in support of this community. On June 6th, the district will be hosting a virtual speakers series event with Rideauwood Addiction and Family Services. The discussion is intended to provide parents and guardians and caregivers with the most current information on youth and substance abuse. For details and registration information, please visit our website at www.ocdsb.ca. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any questions for the director? And I'm not seeing any. So that brings us to item 8 on our agenda, and that is delegations. We have several delegations this evening on the subject of anti-Semitism in OCDSB schools. I will ask our delegates to please be mindful of the time that you've been allotted. Following your presentations, there may be up to 3 questions from trustees. And I will remind trustees that these are questions of clarification, and I will ask delegates to please confine their answer to the question that was asked. Following the delegations, I may call upon the director for comment. And I would like to begin by welcoming Ms. Ilana Gombos to our meeting. Please go ahead to the podium. You will have three minutes for your delegation. And I will ask if you could please start when you're ready.
Okay, good evening, and thank you for having me today. As outlined in the Safe School Policy, the board believes that being and feeling socially, emotionally, and physically safe is a precondition for student learning, achievement, and well-being. A caring and safe school culture is the responsibility of all members of the OCDSB community. Unfortunately, this basic obligation is not being applied for the Jewish kids in our school. In November 2023, the daily announcement platform in school that is being viewed by all students and staff during class featured a jihadi song that promotes hate, martyrdom, and anti-Semitism. In April, the same announcement platform was used to feature a segment about Palestine where speakers did not speak about Gaza or West Bank, but mentioned names of 3 cities that are in the undisputed area of Israel. Denying the existence of Israel is a form of anti-Semitism. As per the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, or IHRA's definition, which has been adopted by the Canadian government. Allowing students to intimidate their peers under the guise of freedom of expression is equivalent to condoning bullying. It's against the Safe School Policy. At school, Jewish students feel unsafe and unsupported. When my Canadian-born Jewish child and his friend were asked to present on Israel, they say they didn't want to expose their identity for fear of being targeted later. I ask each and every one of you, do you know of any other minority in Canada that feels unsafe presenting about their heritage and culture? As part of your obligation, can you ensure that politics is removed from schools as mandated by Minister Lecce? Speech that promotes hate and intimidation is not freedom of expression. It cannot come at the expense of Jewish students and cannot support the spread of misinformation. This is not about picking sides, but about the fundamental right of all kids to feel safe at school. I ask that as part of your diversity, equity, inclusion plans, comprehensive training be provided about Judaism and Jewish identity. This training should be provided by mainstream Jewish organization and would be mandatory for all school administrators, equity leaders, and team in OCDSB, and be offered before September 30th, 2024. In conclusion, I would like to request that as school trustees, you uphold your duty and honor your commitment to all OCDSB students. I ask you to take immediate action to ensure that all students are safe at school. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions for Ms. Gombos? And I have Trustee Kaplan-Murth. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Gombos, for your courage in speaking. You mentioned examples of, you said that there are insensitive messages that were being interwoven in terms of hate, martyrdom, and anti-Semitism. I was wondering for clarification if you could say something more specific about what kinds of things were being said and specifically how that also affected your child's mental health. And finally, whether the OCDSB responded to your concerns if you've raised these before.
Am I allowed to answer?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So thanks for the question, Dr. Kaplan. So specifically, when the jihadi song was playing in the background, my child came home very distraught. He felt that the stage was not supporting him. He felt that the song that was played provided him with an opportunity to hide and not feeling safe inside the school and the environment. The stares from other people that felt empowered by seeing this jihadi song play, and all the information that was shared, and it was played in Arabic. So of course the individuals that appreciated the language could understand and feel supported and empowered by having such a song played during an atmosphere that was already very charged at that time. So my child came home very distraught, saying that he could not understand exactly what was said, but he saw like the reactions of others. He didn't feel that it was just that such a song was playing in the background, and he was really uncomfortable with that. And the same thing with the other example that I provided, where there were, the presentation was given, and my child recognized that 3 Israeli cities were named in the presentation. He knew that those cities are in Israel. Meanwhile, they were claimed as Palestine. And nobody corrected, nobody said a thing. And again, so we did reach out to the school. I must say that the school administration was very receptive to our emails. I feel that they tried, and they just, from the discussions that we had, essentially, it was acknowledged that these interwoven messages, people don't have enough context and information to appreciate what is being said. People don't know what is right, what is wrong, what is offensive and not offensive to others. So it is very challenging for the school to provide a stage for such speech and such actions, and support a group of individuals when they think that it is about culture and it's about sharing nice things about each other's culture. But I think in this environment, this is not appropriate, because administrators and school staff, they're not equipped with understanding what is right and what is not, and what can be safe and not safe to the Jewish population. So I think until we understand more, I think we should stick to sharing cookies and treats, and that's the end. That's the culture that we can support and provide to each other, because until everybody feels that their side can be heard and understood, there is no place for supporting one side and not another.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gombos. Are there any other questions for Ms. Gombos? And I'm seeing none. So again, thank you for coming this evening.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity.
And I would like to call upon our next delegation, Mr. David Handelman. Please come forward. And you also have 3 minutes for your presentation.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. My name is David Handelman. My daughter attends an OCDSB school where I entrust her physical safety and her mental well-being each weekday. She's my top priority, and I urge each of you to take a second to stop and consider the responsibility you hold in caring for her and hundreds of other students throughout the year. It's crucial that each of you take your fiduciary duty towards students seriously. You must prioritize the safety of all OCDSB students, including Jewish students. We've gathered evidence and testimonials as part of the Jewish Parents of Ottawa Students Association. This association continues to grow, comprising 175 families, most of whom are within the OCDSB. Our goal is to ensure our children's safety while under your care, and we won't stop until they are safe. As I mentioned, we've gathered evidence and testimonials indicating a toxic environment for Jewish students in the district. This includes instances of anti-Semitic harassment, bullying, isolation, microaggression. This leads to their marginalization and exclusion on a regular basis. According to the OCDSB's human rights policy, even one instance of such behavior can constitute a poisoned environment, triggering a positive obligation on the board's part to act in protection of Jewish children. Furthermore, Jews are the #1 minority group targeted for hate in Ottawa. In fact, 70% of anti-religious hate is directed to Jews and 30% to all other religions combined. Between these facts and the evidence we've gathered, it's safe to say that currently Jewish students are oppressed across our city and in this school district. Therefore, to be equitable to Jewish students, the OCDSB must go further to protect Jews and should adopt a do no harm first approach. We have received the list of actions taken by the board, but the poisoned environment and oppression of Jews continues, and therefore your legal obligation under your human rights policy remains. Because of the limited time I have to speak here today, I won't diminish and disrespect the severity and trauma experienced by our Jewish children in this poisoned environment by choosing one piece of testimony to share with you. But I will reiterate that we would gladly engage with you to help you understand the evidence we've gathered so that you can uphold your legal fiduciary duty to protect Jewish students. We've developed some recommendations for the board. They are: acknowledge there is a problem with anti-Semitism at the OCDSB. Define anti-Semitism with the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition as the Government of Canada and Province of Ontario have. Educate teachers and administrators with a mandatory PA Day program and enhance education for all students. Remove politics from schools and classrooms except where appropriate, like world issues classes. Enforce policies related to hate and bullying, including for anti-Semitic incidents. Track and report anti-Semitism effectively when it occurs. I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you. And before I go to the first question, I would like to ask, you mentioned that you had compiled a lot of evidence and testimonials of anti-Semitism in schools. If you would be able, please, to share that with us, if it is in writing, I would very much appreciate it. And you could send it to me at my email address or to the director, or both of us, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And we have a question from Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you, through you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Handelman, for speaking. I guess I wanted to ask about the evidence and testimonials because can you clarify, has that list not already been shared with the OCDSB? And if the testimonials have already been shared, has there been any response from the OCDSB about the sense of lack of safety? I also was wondering, I know you don't want to give a specific example, but I think it is maybe helpful to clarify, if you don't have to talk about your daughter if you don't want to, but and kind of to explain what it means that that Jewish children don't feel safe in OCDSB schools?
Yep, so we did, the Jewish Parents of Ottawa Students Association did meet with Director Buffone, Superintendent Farish, and a few other members at the end of March. We shared a summary of the survey results and some examples of testimonials, but not the full list. At that time, I do think they were upset or not pleased to hear the examples of things that are going on in the schools. I would say subsequent to that, they did share some of the initiatives or things the board has been doing to try and address anti-Semitism. We do feel that many of them are more medium to long-term in nature and not addressing the urgent need that's going on right now on a daily basis. And we inquired further about some of those initiatives and never really heard back some details where we could appropriately judge how those initiatives, or who's received. Some of them mentioned education. We don't know who received that education, when it was, who performed it, things of that nature. So we don't have the specifics. In terms of what it's like to feel unsafe, there are examples where there have been events at schools, such as fundraisers, where Jewish students have been targeted, chased, sort of trying to force them to make a donation or choose a side, referring to the political or the armed conflict in the Middle East, and such, where they were told, oh, we'll get you after school. That student had to leave early. Subsequent to that, a few months later, the school decided to do another fundraiser. The parents and JPOSA intervened, saying this isn't a good idea to keep Jewish students safe. The school continued with the event, and that student felt so unsafe, they decided not to go to school at all based on their experience at the previous fundraiser. So I think this shows it's a poisoned environment. Students are afraid to go to school. Fundraisers for local charities are a great thing. When there are fundraisers going on in a particular type of student based on their religious or their creed are being targeted and harassed and chased, that's not a safe environment for any student, and it's unacceptable. It happened once and it happened again, that the school and the board allowed it to proceed again. And we have additional cases of events and speakers where parents were worried about the impact on their children, and the board proceeded anyways when we've written letters. In some cases, we heard that the Jewish equity coach and perhaps a psychologist were sent to the event to help support Jewish students. But that's why I'm advocating for a do no harm approach first, because we shouldn't be holding events that we know are going to harm some of our students, but then send a psychologist and a Jewish equity coach to try and help them feel better after the event is unsafe and uncomfortable and triggering for them. And that is definitely contrary to the board's policies.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any other questions? And I am not seeing any. So again, we appreciate the time you've taken tonight.
Yes, thank you. And I will send you the list from the survey.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Naomi Hirschberg.
Good evening. My name is Naomi, and I'm here today to speak about the troubling issue of anti-Semitism within the OCDSB schools. Never before in my lifetime have I witnessed such hostility and prejudice against Jewish people with anti-Semitic rhetoric and behavior. As a person who is Jewish and shares my Judaism, my cultural Judaism, and my religious Judaism publicly, I've always felt comfortable with my identity until now. And especially as a parent, I worry about my children's ability to express their Jewish heritage without fear or hesitation. Over the past number of years, and especially since October 7th, there's been a noticeable increase in anti-Semitic incidents within the OCDSB schools. Dave already referenced the Ottawa Police Service's hate and bias crime units, the statistics indicating that Jewish individuals are being the primary targets of anti-Semitic attacks and religious attacks. JPOSA has brought forth disturbing accounts from students who've experienced bullying, harassment, hate speech within our schools. They have to endure taunts, racial slurs, Nazi salutes, and being told that Hitler was right. Like, I'm a grandchild of Holocaust survivors, and like, that's awful. And I'm a grown up and I don't know how I would deal with that. And these are children that have to deal with these things. And they're being unfairly blamed for geopolitical conflicts and subjected to vile messages because of their Jewish identity. Jewish students are feeling vulnerable and afraid to express their heritage openly. They fear attending school, identifying as Jewish, or speaking out against anti-Semitic incidents for fear of retaliation. It is imperative for OCDSB schools to be safe, where all students, regardless of their background, feel secure and free from discrimination. In accordance with the Safe School Policy, students should feel socially, emotionally, and physically protected to facilitate their learning and well-being. To address these current concerns, and with that in mind, I propose the following actions to the school trustees and the OCDSB administration. First, there must be a unified commitment to prioritize the safety and well-being of all students above all other considerations. Secondly, in compliance with the Accepting Schools Act, the board must proactively prevent and address all forms of inappropriate behavior, including bullying, discrimination, and harassment. This requires strict enforcement of codes of conduct and the implementation of disciplinary measures for both students and staff who perpetuate or fail to report anti-Semitic incidents. Additionally, the OCDSB should implement a system to track and analyze incidents to better understand the extent of the problem and tailor interventions accordingly. And lastly, I recommend that you adopt the definition of the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, which has been embraced by the province of Ontario and the government of Canada, to provide clear guidance on identifying and addressing anti-Semitic behavior consistently across the board. Jewish students should not have to hide their identities or live in fear of harassment. I urge the board to take decisive action to ensure the safety and well-being of Jewish students within OCDSB schools. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I will ask about questions. I see Trustee Kaplan-Murth again has a question.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Hirschberg, for speaking. And again, I would ask if you feel comfortable with giving a little bit more detail in terms of what does the anti-Semitic rhetoric and hate speech really look like. I think perhaps non-Jews don't understand what Jews mean when they say that, so it might be helpful to be more specific. You did give the example of the Nazi salutes, but if there are other examples, and I'm wondering whether you have any sense of there being a mechanism right now to report for when your child experiences that hate speech or discrimination. What do we have in place right now? Is there anything in place that has been helpful, or is when you listed the things that you want in terms of prioritizing safety and well-being and incident reporting, if we're not doing that, maybe you can explain a little bit more where that vacuum is.
So to speak to the couple of examples, I've heard of situations where children are having swastikas thrown at them, which we collectively know was the symbol used by the Nazis during the Second World War. So if you have family, or if you're Jewish, you probably were raised learning about the Holocaust or the Shoah, which was specifically the murder of 6 million Jewish people, and the countless other people murdered by the Nazis because of their race, creed, sexual orientation, whatever. Being given the Nazi salute. I know in my children's school specifically, there was an incident where they have flags in the entryway and the Israeli flag was pulled down. A parent did complain and the school acted quite decisively and had it placed, like put back up again inside the office, I guess, where it couldn't be taken by students or whomever did that. I also know, again, at my children's school, 2 incidents where unfortunately siblings were both asked by children, other students, well, which side are you on? And the older child was able to defer the questions a number of times and then finally said that she supported Israel. And as she was walking away, she had a rock thrown at her head. Again, the principal and the vice principal acted very decisively. I was really impressed. Dealt with the situation, called the students in, called the parents of the students in, But the younger sibling was given the same questions by a child a number of years older as well. And I think the response at that time was, well, the teachers should, will pay more attention in the hallways. And yes, it is a case of teachers should be paying attention because things happen. I was a student once too, but it's also that they're, like children need to realize there's consequences to their actions. So if you are, verbally assaulting someone, another student, or you are saying hateful things to them, harassing them, bullying them for whatever reason, like it's not acceptable and there need to be consequences. Because honestly.
I think, excuse me for
And-
interrupting, but I think you've answered the first
Okay.
question. Could you please go on? to
Sure.
the
So I would
second
just say
question?
the school board does have policies in place around safe schools, what behaviors are considered acceptable or not. They are inconsistently being applied by school administrators. And I think there should be a strong message across the board that hate and bullying is not allowed, period. And there should be consequences. And they need to follow through with the consequences that exist. I don't think there's a need to reinvent the wheel. It's just to implement the policies that are in place.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And apologies for not telling you in the first place, like I have everybody else, that you had 3 minutes, but you seem to be able to catch on to the routine just fine.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for your delegation this evening. I don't see any other hands up for questions, so I will move on then to the next delegation, which is from Michelle Jacob. And again, welcome to our meeting, and you do have 3 minutes for your delegation.
Good evening. I'm here today to address the infiltration of global politics and the indoctrination of our children in our schools, all of which threaten our children and sows division in our diverse population. I urge the board to respect your mandate of a positive school-wide climate, which begins with intentionally building a solid foundation of respect, trust, care, and optimism by prohibiting all political activities in our schools.
Point of order, Chair.
Minister Lecce has repeatedly
Point
emphasized.
of order.
Right.
Chair, point of order. With respect to our bylaws, I understand that this delegation was to speak primarily on anti-Semitism and not to the conflict that is taking place. So with regard to our bylaws, I would kindly ask that the delegation stick to the issue of anti-Semitism. Thank you.
Trustee Bell, if you look at the written material that this delegate provided when they requested to be a delegation, they did make reference to not having geopolitical considerations be a large part of the activities in our schools, as I recall.
With all
And
respect,
The
Chair,
bylaws,
with
the bylaws do not address the topic. A request to minimize or eliminate geopolitical things from schools is not in my ruling out of order.
however, with the human rights policy, particularly section 4.8A, with regard to promoting and protecting, upholding human rights and fostering and maintaining an inclusive environment. What I am requesting is that I was told by the director this evening that the delegations would be speaking to the real anti-Semitism that they are facing. And I think that in order to reduce the harm faced by other communities by diminishing their ability to talk about their real lived experiences is harmful in accordance with our human rights policy.
Trustee Bell, I have given my ruling. This delegation was accepted, knowing that there would be reference to putting some reasonable limits on geopolitical discussions, et cetera, in schools. And I will permit the delegation to proceed. If you wish to challenge that ruling, you may.
I would not like to challenge that ruling at this time, but I would like to say that real harm is and can be done by diminishing the ability of children to talk about their real lived life experiences and what is happening in the world. Thank you very much.
Please proceed.
Point taken. This is exactly why we're here today, because of people like this who absolutely do not, I'm sorry, has completely derailed me and I am in shock.
You will
I am in
not make
shock.
personal references to trustees. That is not the reason why you're here. Please proceed with your delegation as planned without extraneous remarks.
Minister Leachy has repeatedly emphasized the importance of keeping politics out of schools and has stated there is no place for divisive ideologies. Every action should prioritize and support academic achievement. Yet despite these clear directives, the OCDSB has failed to heed the ministry's guidance, instead allowing political activities, speakers, and ideologies to permeate our school environment. This failure is particularly troubling in light of the rising tide of anti-Semitism in Canada and in our school community. Jewish students, a tiny minority, find themselves increasingly vulnerable to discrimination and hostility as a result of the board's actions. When Sir Robert Borden invited a political activist to speak about the Middle East mere weeks after the worst massacre of Jewish people since the Holocaust, this board downplayed the concern of 70 Jewish parents, effectively ignoring our pleas to cancel the speaker. In preparation for potential harm, a school psychologist and other staff were lined up to support distressed Jewish students after the event. How the board decided to proceed with an event that they knew might harm Jewish students is beyond comprehension. When the speaker came, by her own admission, she veered off course and she was not able to control herself. Against a backdrop of collective trauma, the children found themselves confronted with a dangerous narrative that lacked historical context and integrity. Shamefully, despite admitting that the speaker caused harm and perpetuated Jewish stereotypes, the board has refused to issue a direct apology to all the students, not just the Jewish students who attended the assembly, or make any gesture to right the wrong that was done. OCDSB educators are not equipped to teach our children about complex global political issues, nor are they at liberty of sharing their personal geopolitical ideologies with impressionable students. As Canadian parents, we choose public school. We reasonably expect our children to be free from religious and political indoctrination so that our children can learn in a safe and hate-free environment where they can focus on developing the academic and critical thinking skills necessary to positively contribute to Canadian society. You have violated our trust and confidence. Once again, I quote our Minister of Education, "There is no room for influence or political worldviews in Ontario classrooms. At a time when so many Canadians are divided, it is critical that schools bring people together, not further divide our society and students."
Thank you for your delegation. And we have a question from Trustee Kaplan-Myrth.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Jacob, for speaking, and I can hear how difficult this is for each of the parents who are speaking. I'm wondering if you could just, again, speak a little bit more specifically to how conversations about geopolitics alienate Jewish students. What is you know, without you know, an understanding of that trauma, I think it might be hard for people to understand that, you know, it's what you're
Trustee
asking for.
Kaplan-Myrth, if you have a question, please just ask it. It's not this is not an opportunity for trustees to do their main thing. If you have the question out and it is a question of clarification, I will allow it.
I understand.
So it was a question of clarification, and please don't suggest that it wasn't. I very specifically asked her to clarify the ways in which discussions of geopolitics alienate Jewish students. And I would like her to have the opportunity to answer that, please.
Thank you. Please go ahead with the answer.
So for specific high school courses where the goal is to discuss geopolitics, we have no issue with geopolitics be discussed in those classrooms, assuming that those teachers have in-depth training on how to present issues in a mediated and considerate way, in a way that they can mediate conversations between students and nuance these conversations. Where we have issue is where one-sided political speakers are brought into the school, political speakers with their own trauma are brought in, and they speak about their personal life experience without nuancing, without background. We have issue where children are given the freedom to express geopolitical opinions that they have in an unmediated way, in a way that intimidates other people. We have issue with teachers being in the classroom and sharing their geopolitical views on religion, politics, or any other personal issue. This is not what teachers are in the classroom for. When a teacher stands in the classroom and says, you may pick any author as long as they're not white or not Jewish to do your book report on, that is a problem. When a teacher shares their political views or erases a state off a map that is recognized by the government of Canada, that is a problem. Having a mediated political discussion in a politics or a history class, that's okay. But we don't think that our schools should be turned into political hotbeds of indoctrination.
Can I just clarify? So those are actual examples? There was an example of a teacher saying you can choose anything.
Those
but
are
you
actually-
choose-
those are
Kaplan-Meier,
actual
This
examples.
is not a dialogue back and forth. You asked your question and Ms. Hirschberg has given us a very good answer to, or sorry, not Ms. Hirschberg. Ms. Jacob has given us a very good answer to it. Are there any other questions for Ms. Jacob? And I'm seeing none. So again, thank you. I apologize for the interruption and I appreciate the time you've taken. And we move on to Leah Friedhoff as our next delegation. And again, you have 3 minutes for your presentation.
Okay.
Hello, and thank you for giving.
Did you call me Ilana Albert Novak? Okay, just check. Sorry,
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I just was checking that you called. Sorry, it's okay.
Can you hear me?
Oh, it's Leah Friedhoff
Oh,
is
okay, I didn't
online.
think
Oh dear, I didn't realize that. That's okay. Thank you so much for asking the question because otherwise I might not have realized that I was inviting the wrong person. So Leah, welcome virtually. And thank you very much for being here. And you do have 3 minutes.
Hello, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm a grade 11 student at SRB, and it has been almost 2 years since I last stood before you, pleading for my safety and the safety of my peers in your schools. At that time, I described enduring years of anti-Semitism within the OCDSB that included having money thrown at my feet, Nazi flags waved in my face, and a barrage of online hate during the Hamas-Israel war in the spring of 2021. I shared my realization that part of the reason why OCDSB staff had done nothing to help me was because of the outdated and limited definition of anti-Semitism that was being used by this board. Given your responsibility to ensure student safety, I was sure you would take action. Instead, I was informed that you were on a learning journey. You said the same thing to my sibling the year before. But this journey has led you nowhere. You are driving around in circles. So here I am addressing this board again, because in the past 2 years since you ignored my cry for help, my situation has gotten immensely worse. Members of the school board, I am begging you again to listen to me and to help me. I am begging you to adopt the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. Had you adopted the IRA definition of anti-Semitism when I and others in my community begged you to do so, you would have saved me and my Jewish peers from the months of bullying, harassment, and hate that we have experienced because we are Jewish. The IRA definition of anti-Semitism is globally recognized and comprehensive. It was adopted by the Canadian federal government in 2019 and by the Ontario provincial government in 2020. It includes clear examples of anti-Semitism, such as holding Jewish people collectively responsible for the actions of the Israeli government. This clarity is crucial for creating a safe school environment for Jewish students. However, since you did not adopt the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, when my peers and I report the countless times we are verbally harassed in the halls and on social media by other students, we are told that nothing can be done, or worse, we are told that it is not anti-Semitism. Before October 7th, anti-Semitism was already at an unreasonably high level in your schools. Since October 7th, it has become untenable. My Jewish peers and I have been mourning the deaths of our friends and family murdered on October 7th, while our fellow students cheer on their murderers, a Canadian designated terrorist organization, and staff silently watch from the sidelines. I will not let hate scare me, so I wear my Magen David proudly every day. I'm rewarded by having my peers shout, "Free Palestine, you baby killer," in my face. According to the current OCDSB definition, this isn't anti-Semitic, except that it is. Blaming Jewish people for the actions of a foreign government is not okay. Referring to Jewish or Israeli people as baby killers is an anti-Semitic blood libel created centuries ago that cannot be justified by "it's a political opinion." I have been enduring and fighting anti-Semitism in your schools since I moved to the OCDSB 7 years ago. Every Jew in every one of your schools has been. Since October 7th, it has become infinitely harder. We are not safe in your schools, and no one but us seems to care. My question to you is this: the learning journey you've been on, how long is it going to take? Because you've been on it for more than 3 years, and my little sister is in grade 9. When I graduate next year, I need to know that someone is going to protect her. Will you? Are you going to actually make change with what you've supposedly learned? Will you finally see us, hear us, protect us, and adopt Ira? Because we aren't safe right now, and we won't be until you do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation. And again, we have a question from Trustee Kaplan-Wirth.
Thank you, Ms. Friedhoff. I'm sorry for what you've gone through. My question for you is, you say that you've pleaded for your safety at SRB. Who has responded to you? And if you could just give some sense of, you say that things have gotten worse. In what ways have things gotten worse, and who do you turn to, and what do you get back?
So I'll start with how things have gotten worse to lead into how I've dealt with it. Since the flare-up, obviously since the war in the Middle East rose up again, there has been a lot more hate and a lot more acceptance of hate in our schools. Everyone feels that they have to take a side, and that in turn results in people posting very anti-Semitic things and feeling that they have a right to chant things in the hallway at Jewish students because they feel passionately about something happening thousands of miles away. I try to go to my teachers, but my teachers, they obviously aren't trained on this. There's only so much they can do. A lot of them feel for me. A lot of them have been great with talking about it, but at what extent can they really punish a student? So I go to the office. I go talk to our principal, our vice principals, etc. And it's kind of the same response. They just don't know what to do. They aren't able to really classify what's happening as anti-Semitism, and they have implemented ways of them trying to help that makes it worse. There was some restorative something that was happening a couple months ago where there was an incident at my school that affected a bunch of Jewish students, and they decided that I single-handedly had to be the one to deal with it. And so they put me in the office. They made me miss hours of school talking about my feelings when it was something that affected a bunch of people, and nothing was ever done. So I just feel like they don't know what to do. They're at a loss, and it's because we don't have a definition of what anti-Semitism is and because they aren't trained.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other questions, Ms. Friedhoff. But again, we appreciate very much your time.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have 2 additional delegations. These are 2-minute delegations, and I will begin with Ms. Ilana Albert-Novick, and I almost feel as though you and I are old friends already.
No, I think it really is me. So thank you.
Please go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Okay. My child is a student at Maryville High School, where the atmosphere has become increasingly tense for Jewish students who are fearful to express their identity amid rising incidents of discrimination and intolerance. Since October 7th, the issues Jewish students are facing are becoming more severe. A Maryville student was charged with a hate crime for displaying a swastika at a protest, and my child found the same symbol carved into a school cafeteria table. Educators have made disparaging remarks about Jews in the state of Israel. Student book study choices were restricted based on the author's ethnicity or religion. And these remarks and actions perpetuate and exasperate divisions within the school community, and they directly impact the safety of Jewish students. My own child requested to present her anthropology project on Judaism privately to the teacher for fear of her peers' response to the subject and ultimately to her as a Jew. Let me repeat that. This Maryville High School student was afraid to present to the class on the subject of a 3,500-year-old culture and religion to which she proudly belongs because, in her words, many of my classmates hate Israel and some of them Jews too. Think about that. A child in Canada in 2024 does not feel safe amongst her peers and teachers Our schools and our school district is supposed to be a safe space for children to learn and thrive. Substitute any other religion, culture, or country's name into that sentence. Would it be acceptable? Hate has no place in our schools. A critical call to action is required to enforce existing anti-hate, anti-bullying, and safe school policies, including those against anti-Israel and anti-Jewish hate. The urgent plea is for our school board to prioritize all student safety, to foster an inclusive environment where diversity is celebrated and discrimination swiftly addressed by adopting the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, as everyone has mentioned, the other delegates before me, and through decisive action. Then and only then can the board fulfill its commitment to provide a safe and supportive learning environment for everyone. Thank you.
And thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Trustee Kaplan-Mers has a question.
Thank you, Ms. Albert Novak. I was wondering if you could explain in a little bit more detail. You mentioned that some educators said things that were anti-Semitic. I'm wondering if you have examples of that. You mentioned that some books were banned or were children were told they couldn't read certain books.
It
I'm
was
wondering if
there's the school summatives for one of the English classes. Part of it was that they were not allowed to have, I believe it was, I don't have it in front of me, a Jewish, Russian, something about the Holocaust, and it had to be a person of color. It couldn't be like a white author or anything like that. So it was very restricted in that sense. And then in terms of the, I had brought it up with the school, so I'm wary to bring it up here to say what was said to the classroom, but should I go ahead and say it? I don't.
If you're already dealing with it at the school.
I had
and-
spoken to the
Oh.
principal about it, but I didn't get it, to my mind, a satisfactory response because I was told that I couldn't be privy to what was happening with the teachers, which I totally understand. But I felt like I wasn't really explained how my child was going to be made to feel safe. I did take proactive actions, the school didn't provide it, but I called the school and said, I need a safe place for my
In that
child.
circumstance, it would be appropriate, probably, for us to reach back out to you.
I would love that, but I was told
rather
the
than
case was
doing it in a
closed.
public forum.
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I just wasn't finished my question. The other part of my question was, what did the teacher do about your daughter's feeling of lack of safety expressing her culture and religion?
They did let her present privately, and my only feeling is she's in her final years of high school. That's when you need experience, presenting in front of classrooms and stuff. And the fact that she felt so anxious and so scared to do that, and that she couldn't, it's a class on anthropology, which I studied in university, like why she can't talk about Judaism, which again is something she's very proud about. But she felt like if she did, it would, her friends and her peers would probably turn against her, but the teacher supported her and let her do it privately.
Thank you very much. You've been very clear.
Thank you.
And I'm sure the director has made a note. We will make sure, I would expect
you.
the superintendent of instruction for Maryville will reach back out to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. And we are now at 8.7, and I'd like to welcome Joyce Coldry. And again, you have 2 minutes for your presentation. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. Most hate crimes reported to the Ottawa Police are against Jewish people, despite the fact that we represent less than 1% of the total population. Safety concerns extend to our schools. Jewish students in the OCDSB either defend themselves against anti-Semitism on a regular basis or hide their identity for fear of being targeted. The school board has been made aware of personal attacks, social media threats, and the distribution of blood libel and misinformation through school-associated media channels. 2 youths in Ottawa were recently charged with terrorist-related offenses that target Jewish people. These are regular reminders that the safety of Jewish students is in jeopardy. I have been following this board's lack of response to anti-Semitism. letters from concerned parents are not answered, or they are met with performative responses. Meanwhile, your silence emboldens the promotion of hate and intimidation, and students continue to suffer the consequences. We need you to prioritize the safety of Jewish students. They have a tremendous amount of hate directed towards them. You can choose to take action by adopting the International Holocaust Remembrance Association definition for anti-Semitism, and then deliver mandatory training in fall 2024 to support its implementation. Contact the Jewish Federation of Ottawa for the training, not an anti-Semitic or anti-Zionist fringe group that would further exacerbate the current situation. Whatever your political views, I have to believe that you place importance on keeping students safe in your schools, including the very small minority of Jewish ones.
Thank you. And we have a question from Trustee Kaplan-Meier.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you for speaking, Ms. Coldry. I'm wondering if you can explain a little bit what you mean by silence. You said the silence. What do you mean by that?
So by silence, I mean, requests are made. We hear from student delegates that requests have been made to adopt a recent definition of anti-Semitism. I haven't really heard anything about what discussion and debate has been happening around that definition, or what questions might exist, or what reasons that you have to be considering it. I haven't heard anything about that at all. I know that letters from parents are often just not answered, or require parents to continue to bring forward those same letters asking for a response, and they're not really met with much of anything. It's really left to the school administrators, it seems, to figure out their way through this issue that we're having. And it is a very big issue, actually, for our students. You hear so many examples, and the troubling thing is that it's not hard to find these examples. And administrators are looking for some leadership around this issue. And that's where there's silence. So I hear from the principal, I hear from the vice principal, I hear from the teachers, but I don't hear from the board, and I don't understand it. So thank you for your question. I really appreciate that. And if there is opportunity to talk about this definition of anti-Semitism, if there is opportunity for us to come back and perhaps have a more in-depth discussion about anything that we've raised today, I'd be more than welcome to do that. And I'm sure that anyone sitting here would feel the same way. We're looking for partnership in this. And I do honestly believe that all of you are here today because you care about safety, and you care about schools, and you care about students in the schools. And I think that that's where we have something in common. And I would like to draw upon that to end the silence and to start having really good discussions to help these kids.
Thank you for your presentation. And at this point, I will ask the director if he wishes to make any comment in general, just briefly.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I'd like to start just by acknowledging with reflection and regret the lived experiences that I think our students, our staff, and our families continue to experience in a tremendously difficult time globally. A time that by all acknowledgement is bigger than us as an organization and an organizational family. So I understand the spirit of the delegation shared tonight. I also want to share, before making a few additional comments, my gratitude to the delegations for pointing out where there were instances at the school or system level of swift action, of response, of conversations, of connections that help us all learn from the experiences that are being lived. It is true, as Ms. Friedoff shared online, we are on a learning journey and it is a struggle for us. There's no question about that. It's a struggle on many fronts, and it's a struggle under which we are under immense pressure with every word written and with every action taken. Scrutiny from all sides, from all individuals. The space for us as an organization to make any move is extremely tight, adding to the pressure of what happens when we make a misstep. And that's truth from our side. From our perspective, it's very difficult at times to make the precise right decision in any given context, only to face a series of criticisms with those moves made. It's not easy. And I think you know that. I think your lived experience isn't easy either. I thought a comment made tonight was really important for me to hear. Greater attention to some of the short-term pieces while we work on those longer-term journey pieces. I thought that was a fair comment for us as an organization. Some of what we're trying to do is going to take us longer time, but I do appreciate some of the comments made in the here and now around some of our responsiveness. There are a few areas that I have noted this evening from the conversations. And again, I thank the delegations for your respectfulness, despite the challenges that you're facing as an organization. I'll make these quick and then I'll ask the chair for a short recess break for us for a 5 or 10 minute period. One is our community connections with JFO, for example, and yes, with the National Council of Canadian Muslims, as well as the Jewish Federation of Ottawa, to try and work through our challenges. The continued work on our anti-hate toolkit. It's not perfect, but we're working through it and we're learning from some of the great suggestions being made from our community partners. The professional learning you've all mentioned, and last but not least, a better tracking mechanism for the instances that occur, and it's tricky. Not every instance makes its way up to my office or the superintendents or the principals even. Some are dealt with brilliantly at the classroom level, and I heard examples of that this evening that, again, I'm very grateful for. So it is a work in progress for us. We will continue to work at it, and we'll continue to reach out to community partners that are trusted for us in providing us great advice on this very difficult time globally, but locally as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. And I would like to again say on behalf of all of us, our thanks to all of the delegates this evening for taking the time to share your very important concerns with us. And with that, I will call a 5-minute recess. call this meeting back to order. Moving to item 9 on our agenda, confirmation of the minutes from the board meeting of the 25th of April, 2024. Do we have a mover for those? Trustee Lee, thank you. Seconded by Trustee Lyra. Are there any errors or omissions in these minutes? I will flag one, and that is that the signature block on the last page of the minutes should be corrected with my name. And seeing no other corrections, all those in favor of confirming these minutes? And opposed, that is carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes of the 25th of April? And again, with none to deal with, I will now call upon Vice Chair Milburn to present the report from Committee of the Whole meeting on the 7th of May.
I will now move receipt of the May 7th, 2024 Committee of the Whole reports.
And seconded by Trustee Presley. Are there any errors or omissions in this one? And I will flag one for staff, and that is on page 3 of the report in the language of the first motion where it says Cope Avenue, it should be corrected to say Cope Drive. And with that, I'll call the question on receipt. All those in favor of receipt? And those opposed? And that motion is carried. Vice Chair Milburn.
On a motion by Trustee Scott.
And we'll need a substitute mover. Trustee Blackburn, thank you.
On a motion by Trustee Blackburn, which I will second, that the new secondary school in Stittsville located at Ottawa at 700 Cope Drive, be named Maplewood Secondary School effective September 2024.
Thank you, Chair Milburn. Is this a consent item? And I'm not seeing any objections, so we'll take the vote shortly. Other recommendations?
On a motion by Trustee Jenkins, which I will second, that the new Finley Creek Elementary School located in Ottawa at 820 Minnica Road in Finley Creek be named Minnow Minnica Elementary School effective September 2024.
Thank you, Vice Chair Milburn. And is this a consent item? And I see no objection. There was a change required in that one? Yeah. Oh, we do have some supplemental information for that one. So that one can't be consent. So we'll have to bring that one back later. Anything else by way of recommendations in that report?
There are no other recommendations on this report.
Thank you. Let's go right on then to the report from the 21st of May, 2024.
I will now move receipt of the May 21st, 2024 Committee of the Whole report.
And do we have a seconder for that? Trustee Presley, thank you. And are there any errors or omissions in this report? Seeing none, I'll call the question on receipt. All those in favor? And opposed? And that motion is carried. And there are no recommendations? There are no recommendations in that report. Thank you, Vice Chair Milburn. And we have yet another committee report, and this is the report from the Ad Hoc Board and Director Performance Evaluation Process. And I will ask Vice Chair Milburn again.
I will now move receipt of the May 9th, 2024 Ad Hoc Board Self-Evaluation Process and the Director Performance Evaluation Process on behalf of the Chair of that committee, which is Chair Scott.
Seconded by Trustee Lee, thank you. Are there any errors or omissions in this report? And seeing none, I will call the question on receipt. All those in favor? And opposed? And that is carried. Back to you, Vice Chair.
On a motion by Trustee Aziz, which I will second, that the performance plan attached as Appendix A to Report 24-077 be used for the Director's performance evaluation for the 2023 to 2024 school year.
I'm just trying to find the right recommendation here. There we go. And is this a consent item? And I'm seeing that it is, so we will deal with it shortly.
May I continue?
Go ahead.
Okay. On a motion by trustee Aziz, which I will second, that the board initiate the 2023 to 2024 performance evaluation process for the Director of Education and direct staff to enter into an agreement with Boyden Executive Search to facilitate the 2023 to 2024 Director's Performance Evaluation. And B, that the director directs staff to update policy P.051.gov evaluation of the Director of Education and Secretary of the Board to ensure alignment with the Ontario Regulation 83/24 Director of Education Performance Appraisal.
And is this a consent item? And I'm seeing no objection. So we will hold that vote for a few minutes. Back to you, Trustee Milburn.
On a motion by myself.
We are going to need a substitute mover again. Trustee Nash, thank you.
On a motion by trustee Nash, which I will second, that the terms of reference for the Director and Board Performance Appraisal Committee attached as Appendix A be approved, and B, that the existing ad hoc committee for the board's self-evaluation and Director Performance Evaluation processes be renamed to the Director and Board Performance Appraisal Committee with the roles and responsibilities outlined in the terms of reference.
And is this a consent item? And it is not a consent item, so we will hold that one for later. And anything else?
On a motion by trustee Aziz, which I will second, that the performance plan attached as Appendix A to Report 24-077 be used for the Director's Performance Evaluation for the 2023 to 2024 school year.
And is this a consent item? And I'm seeing no objections, so that is another one that we will be able to deal with. So if we could please have all of the motions that are consent items. And is there one more motion? Oh, wait a second. I see. We've got them all. So I will call the question on these and ask Manager Guthrie to please open the vote in eScribe. And Trustee Dixon, if you're there, if you would, okay, I see your hand is up. Is that a positive vote?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. And we have a result here, and that is 11 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions. And that moves us on to the non-consent items, and that is first the recommendation with regard to the naming of the new Finley Creek Elementary School. And that was moved by Trustee Jenkins, and we have supplemental information. So Trustee Jenkins, would you like to have introduction and then we can ask for the supplementary information, or we can have the supplementary information first and then we can go to the motion?
Put the supplementary information first, please.
So I look to staff with regard to the supplementary information that's been provided.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll ask staff members for comment, or perhaps Manager Guthrie for any clarification on that part, or Executive Officer Giroux.
Madam Chair, there was, this is the spelling of the school name. Am I correct on the item?
That's correct.
The staff did reach out to Elder Albert Dumont with respect to the spelling of the name, and we were advised to adjust the spelling. And so you see in the memo before you that the spelling has changed. And so it's not a change of the school name, but simply an alignment with the spelling as advised by the Indigenous community.
Thank you very much for that clarification and for all those who did their homework on this. So I will go back to Trustee Jenkins to put the recommendation on their floor. And if in her introduction she wishes to move the amendment, she can do that.
Thank you, Chair. I move the amendment.
Well, yeah.
Would you like me to read it?
I'm just trying to remember whether you need to actually move the recommendation again, or since it's already been moved and seconded, I think it is on the floor. So in your introduction, you're moving the amendment?
I'm moving the amendment, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder for the amendment? Trustee Lyra, thank you. And is this amendment friendly? And I'm seeing no objection. So any additional introduction, Trustee Jenkins?
None required.
In that case, I'm going to ask if there's any discussion on the motion. And is there any wrap up? And I think there is
None required.
which means that we can go directly to the vote on this. And I will ask Manager Guthrie to open the vote, please. And again, Trustee Dixon, your hand is up. I'm assuming that means you're voting in favor.
That's correct, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And the motion is carried, 11 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions. So moving on to the next item that is non-consent. That was the motion with regard to the terms of reference of for the Director and Board Performance Appraisal Committee. And that was the one was it Trustee Nash who substituted? So that motion is on the floor with Trustee Nash. Did you wish to have any introduction?
No, but I believe, or comments?
Thank you. Thank you. So discussion on the motion, Trustee Lyra.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we had a comment on the decision to make 5 people the members of the committee, given how important one of the roles that the board has, one of the important roles the board has is evaluating the director's performance, whether or not we might want to consider expanding it beyond 5 people.
And as I recall, that was discussed in the committee meeting, but I will look to staff for a comment in terms of the relevance of the size compared to what is permissible.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll turn this over to Executive Officer Giroux, who's got a steady hand on the process for us as an organization.
Thanks very much. This school district is fortunate in that we already have an extensive director performance evaluation process in place and an established committee. And so we brought forward a recommendation to the committee that the existing committee be repurposed to serve the new functions under the regulation. And we did have a conversation about increasing the membership from 5. I believe the maximum number it could be is 7. And the recommendation was that remain at 5. It's certainly within the purview of the board to change that to 7 if there's an interest in that. But I think the sense was 5 was a workable number.
Trustee Trustee Lauer, you still have the floor.
Thanks. I am content to have heard that there was a discussion and that people decided 5 was the right number. I feel no need to make changes at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lyra. Trustee Blackburn?
Madam Chair, is this committee not like any other committee that any trustee is welcome to attend, even if they're not on the committee?
Ms. Giroux? Any trustee could attend?
I think any trustee could attend. We'll actually have to take a closer look at that in the regulation and make sure there's nothing that precludes that. I'd hate to answer off the cuff and give an incorrect answer. Definitely other trustees could attend and observe. Given that the committee is engaged in the evaluation itself, I think there might be some additional limitations on that we'd have to give some thought to.
Thank you. Although I would note also that the process contemplates participation, significant participation by all board members. Indeed, that is required. So Trustee Blackburn, anything further? Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Back to Trustee Nash then for wrap up.
None required.
In that case, we will call the question, ask Manager Guthrie to open the vote, please. It's not showing. Trustee Dixon, you're voting in favor?
Yes, I am, Chair.
Thank you. And since it's not coming up in my scribe, I'm also voting in favor. And the motion is carried, 11 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions. And I believe that was all of our non-consent items, which brings us then to the next item on our agenda. And that is report 24-075, the appointment of OPSPA representatives for 2024-2025. And we have before us a report on that, Mr. Director.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll turn that over to our executive officer to provide an update.
Thanks very much. Through you, Madam Chair, there has been some changes at OPSPA that affect the OPSPA governance, and this will impact the board's election of OPSPA representatives. And so we will continue to appoint 2 trustees as the OPSPA reps to the board of directors. And they will be the voting member and alternate voting members at the OPSPA conference. We will no longer appoint alternate OPSPA members. And so you have a recommendation before you this evening, which is to appoint 2 trustees to the board of directors. And I just can't actually see it on the screen. And those 2 will be the voting delegates for the Eastern Regional Council meetings and the voting and alternate delegates for the OPSPA annual general meeting for the 2024-2025 term of office. This also aligns with the change in OPSPA's timing of OPSPA's annual general meeting, and I'm sure that the OPSPA representatives can speak to more of the background on this issue than I can.
Thank you very much for presenting the report. Before we move to nominations, I will ask if there are any questions in terms of process, and I'm seeing none. So that means that I will call call for nominations.
Nominations.
Oh, did you have a question? Yeah, okay. I will call for nominations for the position of 2 directors to the OPSPA Board of Directors. And I had trustee Nash first.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've been very well served by the representation of Chair Lynn Scott and Jennifer Jenkins, and I propose the nomination of Lynn Scott and Jennifer Jenkins to the OPSPA Board.
And so we have a nomination. Well, actually, it adds up to 2 nominations. Do we have a seconder for those 2 nominations? Trustee Lyra, thank you very much. And do you accept the nomination, Trustee Jenkins?
Thank you, Chair. I accept.
And I will also accept the nomination. Thank you. Are there any other nominations for the position of OPSPA directors for the coming year? Trustee Blackburn?
I move we close nominations.
So we have a motion to close nominations. Is there a seconder? Trustee Lee? I will call the question on voting on the closure of nominations. All those in favor? And opposed, and that motion is carried. And I believe that we should still have someone move the recommendation with the names in it. Trustee Lyra, thank you. Just so we have it very firmly on the record, and seconded by Trustee Nash. Thank you. And I will ask Manager Guthrie to open the vote. Or do we need to have this as a recorded vote? And Trustee Dixon, you're voting in favor?
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And I am also voting in favor. And the motion is carried, 11 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. And I would like to say on behalf of Trustee Jenkins and myself, thank you very much. We'll do our best to represent you well. Trustee Dixon, do you have a question? Or is that a legacy hand?
Sorry, legacy hand, I'll take it down.
Thank you. Moving on then, we have report 24-079. And I would like to ask the executive officer if she could please introduce this report.
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair. This is a report to appoint an alternate member to the Special Education Advisory Committee. The alternate member is a representative representing the Association for Bright Children, and the term of office is beginning immediately and ending on the 14th of November 2026. The report explains we reviewed the eligibility of the individual. All the information was provided to the board. Happy to respond to any questions, but we recommend the appointment going forward.
Thank you very much for that. And trustees see the recommendation in the report. Do we have a mover for that? Trustee Presley, seconded by Trustee Jenkins. And I will ask the executive officer, please, to open the vote. And Trustee Dixon is voting in favor.
Yes, I am, Chair.
And I am voting in favor. And the display of the vote did not show up. However, it was carried unanimously, 11 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions. And now that brings us to report 24-089, which was distributed today. And I will call upon Associate Director Giroir to present that report, please.
Through you, Chair. As you know, there was an external member of the audit committees whose term did expire. So we did follow the policy in P.016 gov on how to replace an external member of the audit committee. So we advertised through multiple sources. We formed a selection committee made up of the director, the chair of the board, and myself, and we conducted, we vetted the applications before that, and then the selection committee interviewed the two candidates that were qualified to assume the position. We selected the best candidate for the position. We're very excited with the candidate we selected. I think we circulated separately some of his credentials so that you guys could see who we selected and why we selected them. And I think I'll just leave it there.
And so we have the recommendation before us that Chandrasekhar Krishnamurthy be appointed to the audit committee as an external member for a 3-year term. Trustee Lyra.
So moved.
And seconded by Trustee Blackburn. And is there any discussion on the motion? And I'm seeing none. I will ask for the vote to be opened. And Trustee Dixon, you're voting in favor?
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you. And I'm voting in favor too. And we have the result, 11 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. So the motion is carried. Which brings us then to matters for discussion. And I will ask Trustee Lee if we have a report from OSTA this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to inform members of our community that the OSTA Board of Directors, after careful consideration, has decided to suspend the empty seat program, continue with the suspension of the empty seat program until January 2025 with a reconsideration in November 2024.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any questions or discussion? And I'm seeing none. And I now call upon Trustee Jenkins for a report from OPSPA.
There is no OPSPA report this evening for me.
Thank you very much. And I will, however, add one thing, and that is the Education Program Work Group is having a joint meeting with the Policy Development Work Group of OPSPA on Friday this week. And one of the questions that I will be hoping to bring some answers on is the question of what kinds of topics, what kinds of things trustees would like OPSPA to provide as professional development for trustees next year, whether that would be by way of workshops at OPSPA conferences or virtual professional development sessions or whatever, by any means. So if people have suggestions, I'm not asking for them tonight, but if you could please email me any suggestions between now and first thing Friday morning, I would really appreciate it. And Trustee Aziz, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, if you could kindly share a summary of how that meeting goes and any helpful feedback as we embark on the program review as well. A summary of that meeting, whether in camera or in public, that would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you. We will do our best. Anything further, Trustee Lee, or sorry, Trustee Lyra?
I was wondering if we had any updates on the motion that we passed or any updates around the creation of the LGBTQ caucus at OBSPA.
Nothing since what I shared previously. We will be finding out more, I expect, I hope, when we're getting the agendas for the meetings around the annual general meeting.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? And I'm seeing none. As always, we have attached our board work plan. We have no new matters for information as far as I'm aware. Trustee Nash?
Yes, and through you, Chair, I've heard from two of my schools where there are tremendous wait lists for the before and after school
Well,
program.
that's new business, so we'll get to that in just a sec. So in terms of matters for information, nothing new unless the director heard something exciting today that I don't know about. And he obviously didn't. So that brings us to new business. And Trustee Nash, please go ahead.
Thank you. And as I was mentioning, I have heard from two of my schools where there are tremendous wait lists for the before and after school programs. And speaking with the general manager, it seems that this is throughout our district. I understand there are discussions and that at some point trustees will be getting a note on this. And I just wanted to get a bit of an update.
Sure.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll follow up with staff and then follow up with the Board of Trustees as soon as possible on an update.
Thank you.
Is there any other new business, Trustee Bell?
Great. Thank you, through you, Chair. I wanted to note last week through a number of school visits, one in particular for Bring Your MPP to School Day. Joel Harden and I visited Adult High School. I was very pleased with the visits. In particular, they had students, adult students, come to talk to us about their lived experiences and how Adult High School has really helped them to shape their community, and going into that school every day and the services that they are able to access and the people that they are able to meet, and then the jobs that they're able to get through those connections have really made a huge difference in the lives of thousands and thousands of ultimately, I think it's 80% of those students are new immigrants. And so I just wanted to share with my colleagues, this is something that we can be absolutely proud of when it comes to Adult High School and the lives that we are helping to shape in a very, very positive way. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Trustee Bell. I know that a number of trustees have been engaged in Take Your MPP to School visits, and I would really appreciate having a summary of how those went, which I will be able then to share further with the advocacy people at OPSPA, and which may become useful information for our own advocacy committee to include in an agenda at a future meeting, particularly when we're planning for next year. So if people could share that with me in writing, that'd be great. And Trustee Blackburn, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to let my colleagues know that I had the honor of joining our Director of Education yesterday at Sir Guy Carleton Secondary School. We met with the Minister of Education for Prince Edward Island, Natalie Jameson, and I just want to commend the Principal Dorianne Marslin for giving the Minister and her entourage an excellent tour, and she was very appreciative of the learning that she got there.
Thank you very much for that. Is there any other new business? And I'm seeing none. And therefore, having completed our agenda, I declare this meeting adjourned.